What's up, YouTubers? Today we're going to talk about the Spyderco Rock Lobster. This is a Jens Onso design, and this is the BladeHQ exclusive edition in M4 steel. The knife weighs in at 4.1 ounces, has a 3.75-inch blade, three and a half of that is usable, and came in at a price of $230. This was a sprint edition, or sprint run, if you will, from the BladeHQ in the M4, and they are sold out. But in case this might be useful if you're considering buying it on the secondary market, because I think a few of these are going to probably find their way out there relatively quickly. It utilizes a nested liner lock inside G10 scales, of course, with the BladeHQ coloring with the jade green natural colored G10 scales. I'm going to color this one in the future into scarlet red. I just ordered the dye for that one, so if it's going to be a lobster, it's going to have to be scarlet red. That was the closest one I could kind of pick out. But let's go ahead and look at some comparison knives. There is a sheep's foot version of the Spyderco Caribbean. They have similar blade lengths. This is a full 4-inch blade. Does have more usable space, and that one utilizes LC200N steel, which this one should have been in there. The other one that really is just kind of a natural for me, just based on the design. It is a much smaller blade, but it does have kind of that sweep of belly there, just a big old belly, and just the way that it kind of holds in the hand, the Spidey Chef. The Caribbean, by the way, is $190, and this is $235 against a $230 knife. So that's why I would say this might be some comparison money that you may want to lay out there in lieu of buying the Rock Lobster. So let's jump right into the pros of this one. The full flat grind utilizes the same thickness, 0.11 of steel as the Spidey Chef, so it slices very well with that full flat grind. They did a good job with it, as Spyderco really tends to do. This knife is actually really good with gloves. Let me go ahead and demonstrate that. Didn't flick it open great, but it does utilize fairly well with two gloves. You're going to notice this big finger choil, double finger choil. It's actually one of the cons barehanded, but with gloves, it actually is really, really nice. This one, if I had to be cutting a whole lot with gloves, really enjoyed that one. And also, the liner lock is easy enough to get to. You just got to push it away a little bit. But it does, in the hand, it works really well with the gloves. Going back to some of the slicing, one of the things I will say is it has a fairly decent, the belly is fairly decent for cutting. Oops, let me get this on there. You can get almost all of that on a flat surface. See how you're just missing that slight little bit. But this one did cut food relatively well. I'll go ahead and intercut some of that right now. But I did cut quite a bit. The edge retention of the M4 steel was fantastic, as I would have expected against a cutting board, but I cut an awful lot of stuff. It is a pretty fidgety liner lock, so thumb works fine. There's enough on the backside to Spidey flick that. You just got to work on it, just getting your thumb in there a little bit. Left-handed, actually, it's great because you have that full nice opening on the backside there, and so your left hand, wow, it's literally just very natural for that. That was kind of a good thing. And actually, thank you to Spyderco for actually cutting in here a choil, sharpening choil. So I appreciate that. Not a lot of Spyderco knives have that. I don't know if that was on by the designer's request that it was sure to have that or not. But I do appreciate that. And then the last thing I would say on the pro side is that it is very thin in the pocket. Again, going back to the Spyderco, the Spidey Chef, it's just about the same thickness. It's just ever so slightly thicker, but for the most part, it kind of carries very similar to that one. Just a little bit, slight bit bigger, obviously, with that longer blade length, but again, not much more usable space. On the con side, this M4 steel should have been LC200N, just based on the design, and it's a rock lobster. Lobsters live in the sea. Hello, Spyderco Salt series, right? I just don't get it. This one should have never been an M4. I know that seems to be the preferred exclusive that BladeHQ has, but it just this one really begged for LC200N. I think that there was, and this is kind of, I hate to litigate many years later, 6 or 7 years later, a design of a knife, but there seems to be a good portion of the blade that should have been ground down, I think, and was just wasted space. This big chunk here, like I said, if they had, instead of ending the grind there, if they had just gone over all the way to right there, you would have had a little bit more usable space, a little bit more usable on a cutting board for use of that. And I just think that was kind of a loss. Maybe they could have asked the designer, hey, can we just extend this out here? So that I consider that a problem. Again, the 2.5 finger choil here for my medium large hands, it just, when I was cutting a lot with this one, I ended up in this position, and you're just kind of a little bit loose and a little bit far away from the blade when you are cutting. So that wasn't the greatest. But then when you move forward and you want to get closer in when you're doing a fair bit of cutting, you end up basically dragging this third finger over here into there, and it becomes kind of a 2.5 finger choil. So, if you got really, really large hands, this one might be just fantastic for you. Really small, and it'll be a full 3-fingered. Maybe that'll be good for that, and I think it would. Medium large hands, and not so good with that 2.5 finger choil. It does have right-handed only carry, tip up or tip down. One of the things that Spyderco normally is really great at is accommodating the multiple hands, and they could have, I think, based on the liners of this, looking at it. Oh, by the way, it does use phosphor bronze washers in there, so it can take gunk inside there. Not a problem. Again, going back to the non-stainless steel, though, the M4, that was just a big miss on this one. I think this particular knife also joins the league of ugly Spyderco knives. So in that sense, it kind of meets their persona of some of the things I like to do. I really love and appreciate that they do bring a lot of things to the table that are from different designers. But this one, I think, I'm going to go ahead and compare it to the Yojimbo and then the Manix 2. I think these are all just really, really ugly knives. You can decide for yourself. But for my part, it does join the league of really ugly knives from Spyderco. And, that's really just maybe my aesthetic preference. But I think it is really, you pull this out, people are like, oh, that's really interesting. It kind of looks like a platypus or something. And, it's a lobster. Once I get this thing scarlet red, it will look a lot better, I think. Overall, one of my impressions of this knife, I think it's an overpriced homage to Jens Onso, who is a great knife designer. And then they just turned it into a capitalistic opportunity to artificially hike price through limited production and distribution. Is this worth the price of $235 or $230? There's no scenario of reality in which I can really see that. I think it's a fair value. Is it a useful knife? It is. But if I had to choose between this great design and fully, and by the way, I didn't just demonstrate this before, but the Spidey Chef does get full blade onto a cutting surface. So, for me, this is not a recommendable knife. Certainly not at that price point. Look for it on the used market. It's, for me, it's going to be a project knife to muck around with, and definitely recolor that thing. But, it's just not, this is not a good value. I'm really struggling to find where this is a good value knife. And I cannot, under any circumstances. It's not a bad knife. It's a useful knife. It was just not a great value. So hope you did enjoy this. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and have a great day for yourselves. Take care now.